What's up, Facebook? This is for my mechanic buddies. I thought it'd be cool to show fuel pressure adjustment with a scope instead of the typical fuel pressure gauge. And honestly, this works so much better. I'm tempted to do it this way every time. So let me show off the parts here for a second. This little guy over here is the Pico WPS 500. And he's tapped into the factory fuel pressure Schrader valve down there somewhere. Right there. And this car has an old school Powerdyne supercharger on it with an adjustable fuel pressure regulator that looks like it's been on there like 20 years. Let's see if I can get you a shot of that. So it's got a adjustable stud and nut that helps to push on the diaphragm, and you can adjust fuel pressure to whatever you want. Amazingly enough, after all this time, it still works. That's really cool. So I'm chasing a misfire on the car, and the car left a while back running pretty good, and the customer brought it back, and one of the things he mentioned to me was, make sure you check the fuel pressure, which I thought was pretty odd considering I had just checked the fuel pressure for him the last time it was in and adjusted it. So that was a clue that maybe the customer's been monkeying with the fuel pressure, so I thought I'd double check it. And I figured while I was at it, I would take a look on the scope for ignition misfires or whatever's making this thing stumble around a little bit. And so I thought, well, let me just use the WPS 500 to do the fuel pressure test, and that'll make my life a little bit easier while I'm adjusting the adjustable regulator. So adjusting it is really stinking simple this way. If I can get this light to work on my scope, I'll let you guys take a peek at the pressure while I turn the knob. Then you just lock down this little lock nut on there, verify the pressure didn't move, and call it a day. So, let's see some comments here. Hey guys, Adam, Steve, Justin. Cool to see the ignition. You got it, buddy. Here it is, and it's TFI EEC-IV Glory. And here's the waveform. The ignition's actually what I checked first, and looked to me like it had a pretty big time rising slope at the end. And that's what that and the guy's comment about checking the fuel pressure is what made me think that maybe this thing's got a lean condition, and that's the source of the stumbling around at idle while I was adjusting it. Justin, to be honest, it doesn't look a lot different. It sloped uphill before a little bit worse. It still slopes uphill. I'm still not real happy with what I see. Are you? But then again, the fuel trims take some time to level out and whatever, so I would have actually thought it'd be really rich until the trims learn. But I don't know, maybe the car's cold enough it's still an open loop or something. I'll tell you what, Justin, just for you, I'm going to crank it back down to crap fuel pressure, and I'll let you guys, gosh, I don't know if I can do this with one hand. I'll try to hold it on there and lower the fuel pressure down to like 20 pounds and let you guys watch and see what the ignition waveforms do. That's as low as I can go. I think I just hit the bottom of the adjustable regulator at 21.5 pounds, Justin. So that's what half the fuel pressure is supposed to have looks like. But bear in mind the fuel trims are countering to some degree, and yeah, not really much change. I was kind of surprised. I thought we'd see a bunch more of that. There are some double lines on there though. Just watch for a minute and see what it looks like. See a little more detail. The way the car's running, it doesn't really feel like it's changed much. Brian Griffith, what's up? Bring them on camera. Bring what on camera? Alright, I'm going to try to keep an eye on that and turn the fuel pressure back up to where it belongs and see if you can see the change. Now that I look at it, almost every one of these has got a double line, which for you guys that maybe aren't familiar with scopes, that's kind of a ignition misfire. So we're looking at the, let me zoom in, I'll give you guys a preview for those of you guys that aren't scope familiar. So let me move this around a little bit and make it easier to see. So what you're looking at is the coil turns on over here, charges, fires, this is the firing line, burns through the combustion chamber, so this is the burn line, and then it goes out and burns off a little bit of excess electricity that the coil's got left over, and then repeats. This firing line spiking up, looks like it's spiking up to about 10 kilovolts, and most of the ignition secondary components are new on this car, so that's kind of a lot, I thought. The burn line, we want to see it kind of slightly U-shaped or almost flat. And when you see a really low slope down the hill, it's rich. When you see a really high slope up the hill, it's lean. And if it's really lean, you'll see two lines. So second line is usually a sign of a lean ignition misfire. And this one doesn't really, it's got it more when it's low on fuel pressure. Again, we're down at 21.5 pounds of fuel pressure, which is as low as I could adjust this thing. And the fuel trims are taking over, making the injectors squirt, more fuel to compensate. But at the end of the day, she's still going to be lean. So I'll keep your eye focused on a couple of these waveforms for ignition. There we go. And I'll turn that fuel pressure back up to 40 or 39.15 where it belongs. This is the really cool part about a quality adjustable fuel pressure regulator. The spec is 39.15 on these older Fords, and it just doesn't get any closer than that. A factory regulator is lucky to be within, I don't know, 1 PSI, maybe 2. But this thing, we're talking about being within a couple hundredths of a PSI. That's really slick. I like that. So, looking again at the ignition, I don't know, I got more work to do. Somewhere there's still some issues with this car that's not just fuel pressure, so I think I'll be swapping the probes around and maybe taking a look at injector flow and some other stuff. I'll let you guys that are watching these waveforms just look at this for a minute, and then I'm going to sign off. If you guys got anything you want to see real quick, let me know. What I'm wondering is if this car is an '88 Mustang GT. I'm kind of wondering with an LS in it. I'm kind of wondering if maybe this thing hasn't had ethanol eat the lines up, or maybe a fuel filter come apart and put some junk in the top of the injector filters, because the fuel pressure dead on. This thing running this lean. And I can tell you the last time it was in just a week or two ago, it wasn't this way. The waveforms actually look pretty textbook. So something's changed to make it run lean. And these cars don't have scan data, but I got some special tuning software that'll allow me to jack into the J report on the back of the PCM and take a look at the actual live data from the computer in real time. And there's a ton of it. So I'm going to watch that and see if I can't see if something's going on with the fuel trims and the commanded lambda, and make sure that all the scan data looks correct, and what the O2s are doing. And also, if that doesn't pan out, I'm going to do a injector bounce test and see maybe about sending things off and having them flow tested, because something's changed that's not fuel pressure alone, that's making this car run a lot worse in the last 2 weeks. Could you get interference from the coil and wires affecting the injectors? Billy Brantley wants to know. No, not really. The wiring for the coil on this car is way over there on the shock tower, and the injectors are all here on the motor. The only thing I did see, and this is pretty creepy, there's a fusible link coming off the starter. It's in really bad shape. I don't know if you can see that, but it's like laying right on the coil housing. I don't want to get nailed with whatever leaks out of that coil, but that's not our problem today. But it's pretty amazing how bad the fusible link is on this car. The car's had new MSD wires, new NGK copper plugs. Looks like a used MSD cap and rotor. I checked the ignition last time it was in, and everything was actually perfect, so I don't think there's anything going on with the ignition that's related to these misfires. It's some sort of fuel-related problem. And I don't think it's a vacuum leak, other than the small one I created unplugging the adjustable fuel pressure regulator. If you guys want to see how much that drops, the pressure right now is sitting right around, it moved down a little bit, 39.02. Let me adjust that up real quick. That's close enough for government work. So it's at 39 now, and I'm going to plug the regulator in. You guys can watch and see what changes. So it dropped from 39 to 31, which is 8 psi. The inches of mercury is what we rate vacuum in, and 1 psi is 2.036 inches of mercury. So basically 1 psi is 2 inches of mercury. So when you plug that thing into vacuum, whatever vacuum you create, let's say it's 20 inches, you're going to get negative 10 psi on the fuel pressure regulator. I can tell that because we just dropped 8 psi, this engine is making about 16 inches of vacuum at idle, which is a little low, but it's kind of tough to say with the supercharger and a bunch of other weird tuning stuff that these old supercharger kits used to use. Billy, yeah, he's asking about ignition bugs and cheap plugs. I have had problems with that, but if you stick to either the factory plug or NGK copper, it's pretty hard to fail. This car has NGK copper UR45s in it, and it's not a problem. I did a while back for a guy that was actually watching here a minute ago. I did do a Silverado with a 5.3, I think it was, that had some Bosch +4 plugs in it, and Chevrolet actually has a TSB out about that it screws up things. Well, the truck came, he's a buddy of mine, it came in for a throttle body code, and I started scoping it and found that there was a bunch of noise in the ground circuits, and it looked really suspicious to me of what was happening. So I called a buddy of mine, Phil, over at the Chevy dealer, and I said, hey, does this ring any bells with you? And he said, yeah, there's a TSB out for Bosch +4s and E3 spark plugs that they screw up these late model GMs, and sure enough, that was the problem. So I pulled out a plug, it was the Bosch +4s, we ditched them and the code went away. So yeah, throttle body codes caused by cheap spark plugs or weird spark plugs. Pretty different. Well, I was hoping the fuel trims would maybe level things out a little bit here, but I still have double lines on my ignition waveforms, so we're going to be digging a lot deeper into why this thing is running lean despite having good fuel pressure. My guess is we're probably talking about plugged up injectors that weren't plugged up 2 weeks ago. So maybe this thing needs a fuel filter, pull the rail, clean the injector buckets out, or send the injectors off and have them professionally cleaned. That's my guess. J.K. Walker wants to know, did you say Platinum 4s? No, I said the Bosch +4s. It's that weird spark plug that's got like 4 electrodes on it or whatever. Any kind of goofy electrode design, it's usually problematic in a V8 car. That might work in some rotary Mazda or something, but it doesn't work with the hood in V8s. If you stick with the NGK copper or whatever the factory plug is, you generally don't have a problem. It's only when you get into special spark plugs that cost twice as much that they're usually huge pieces of junk. What's up, Joel Sace? Keep doing this live feed, Steve. Good stuff. Yeah, you're welcome. I'm going to try to do this a little bit more often. I haven't done many of these in the past, so I really didn't expect very many people to watch this stuff, but I guess we'll see. If I see a lot of people watching it, I'll do more of it, I guess. I have a lot of mechanic friends, like Keith up in New York. What's up, Keith? Paul Danner and a few other guys, a bunch of mechanic guys in the mechanic forums that are real into this stuff. So it's kind of mostly for them, but I thought you guys might enjoy seeing this. I was really hoping that just changing the fuel pressure would make that sloping up secondary waveform go away, but it didn't. So unfortunately, it looks like we got more work to do. Well, that's it for me today. I think I'm going to sign off, and maybe I'll bring you guys back on when I figure out what this problem is, and especially if I can catch it in the act. All right, guys, have a good one.